When people ask me about my childhood, I usually change the subject. It's not that it was terrible, I had food on the table and a roof over my head, but let's just say it wasn't exactly the Brady Bunch. My name's Ruby, and at 32, I'm finally ready to tell my story. Not because I want sympathy, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I was 8 when my life changed completely. That's when my sister Sarah was born, 2 months premature. I still remember my dad rushing to the hospital in the middle of the night, and my Aunt Jessica coming to watch me. Everyone was so worried about the baby, and honestly, so was I. I didn't know much about premature babies then, but I could tell from the adults' faces that something was wrong. Sarah survived, but she was incredibly fragile. Our house turned into something between a hospital and a fortress against germs. Mom was constantly cleaning, and the smell of disinfectant became as familiar as the scent of dinner cooking. Every surface gleamed, and God forbid if I so much as sniffled. "Ruby, was that a cough?" Mom would ask, her eyes narrowing with concern, not for me, but for Sarah. "We can't take any chances. Pack your bag, you're going to Grandma's for a few days." And off I'd go, either to Grandma's house or Aunt Jessica's, like I was being quarantined. It happened so often that I kept a pre-packed bag in my closet. At first, I tried to see these visits as mini vacations, but after a while, it just felt like exile. I threw myself into school, determined to at least make them proud that way. I got straight A's, joined the debate team, even won a regional science fair. But every achievement was overshadowed by Sarah's latest doctor's appointment or minor improvement. "Look, Mom, I got first place in the science fair," I'd say, holding up my trophy. "That's nice, honey. Did you wash your hands?" Sarah's been a bit sniffly today. The worst part? When Sarah turned 7, she suddenly stopped getting sick. It was like a switch flipped, and she became this perfectly healthy kid. But nothing changed with Mom and Dad. They'd spent so long protecting her that they didn't know how to stop. And Sarah? She learned pretty quick that she could get anything she wanted by playing the fragile card. High school should have been my time to shine. I was doing everything right, honor roll, extracurriculars, the works. But in our house, Sarah's drama always took center stage. I remember one parents' night particularly well. My chemistry teacher had just finished telling Mom and Dad about my potential for a science scholarship. "Ruby's one of our brightest students," Mr. Peterson said, beaming. "She has a real future in." Before he could finish, Mom's phone rang. Sarah was having a crisis at home with the babysitter. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Mom asked into the phone, already gathering her things. I could hear Sarah's theatrical sobs through the speaker. "I can't find my favorite pen for homework. The one Ruby gave me is stupid." Just like that, parents' night was over. They rushed home to console Sarah over a pen. A pen. I stood there watching them hurry away, Mr. Peterson awkwardly patting my shoulder. After that, I noticed they stopped coming to my events altogether. It was easier that way, they said. No risk of Sarah's tantrums interrupting things. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even put the trophy on the mantle. "Sarah gets anxious when she sees other people's achievements," Mom explained, tucking my trophy into a drawer. College acceptance day should have been huge. I got a full ride to state, academic scholarship, merit grants, the whole package. I was over the moon until I got home. "Whatever," Sarah rolled her eyes at dinner. "Now you can finally move out and I can turn your room into my gaming paradise. I'm thinking 3 monitors, maybe a streaming setup." I started counting down the days until freshman orientation. 4 years of college flew by, with me spending every possible moment in the dorms or library. Home became a place I visited occasionally, usually for mandatory family dinners where Sarah held court with tales of her latest middle school drama. At 23, armed with my degree, I landed a job as a manager at Thompson & Company. The salary wasn't great, enough to rent a tiny apartment and buy grocery store sushi, but not much else. I should have been discouraged, but honestly, just having my own space felt like winning the lottery. Then one day, scrolling through social media on my lunch break, I saw an ad for an investment course. Learn to make your money work for you. Usually, I'd scroll past that kind of thing, but something made me stop. The course wasn't cheap, but it was within reach if I ate ramen for a month. That course changed everything. The instructor, Dave, had this way of making complex investment strategies seem obvious. I started small, putting a few $100s into promising tech stocks. Then a few hundred more. I studied market trends like my life depended on it, took advanced courses from top investors, learned about risk management and portfolio diversification. My first big win came from a small AI company nobody was watching. My $500 investment turned into $5,000 in 3 months. Then came the biotech startup that tripled my money. Before I knew it, my side hustle was making more than my day job. I'll never forget the morning I realized I could quit. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to care about quarterly reports, when my investment app pinged. Another stock had hit my target price. I did the math, my investment income was now triple my salary. I typed up my resignation letter right there. I kept going to those Saturday family dinners. Don't ask me why, maybe habit, maybe some lingering hope that things would change. I'd sit there, picking at Mom's overcooked chicken, listening to them go on and on about Sarah's life, while my investment portfolio pinged away in my pocket. "Ruby, you're still at Thompson's, right?" Mom would ask occasionally, not really interested in the answer. "Yep, same job," I'd say, and watch their attention drift away before I even finished speaking. It was easier that way. No need to explain that I'd quit 2 years ago, that I was making more money in a day than I used to make in a month. Sarah was the star of every dinner conversation. She'd gotten into Carleton University, one of those schools where the tuition costs more than a house. "It's so expensive," Mom would sigh, but her voice was proud. "But Sarah deserves the best education. We've taken out loans, of course, but it's worth it for our little girl's future." Sarah would beam, twirling her pasta. "My roommate has a Gucci backpack. Everyone there comes from such good families." The undertone was clear, "Unlike your family, Ruby. Unlike you." One Saturday, I arrived to find Mom in tears over bills. Dad was at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "The property taxes went up again," he muttered. "And with Sarah's tuition." I watched them struggle, remembered all the times they'd chosen Sarah over me, and still, they were my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer, $1,000 a month, to their account. When I told them about it, Mom actually hugged me. It was the first time in years she'd shown me any real affection. "Oh, Ruby, this will help so much." I thought maybe things would change after that. Maybe they'd see me differently. But then I overheard them in the kitchen after dinner. "We should send some of Ruby's money to Sarah," Mom was saying. "At least $300. The poor thing feels so out of place among all those wealthy students." "Good idea," Dad agreed. "She needs to keep up appearances. Maybe she can finally buy herself that designer bag she's been wanting." I wanted to walk in there and tell them everything. About quitting my job, about my investments, about the fact that I could buy the whole damn designer store if I wanted to. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking my head, listening to them plan how to spend my money on Sarah's social climbing. By the time I turned 29, I was ready for a change. My investment portfolio had grown beyond my wildest dreams, and I was tired of paying rent. After months of searching, I found the perfect apartment in a secure building with a great view of the city. Nothing flashy, just clean lines, good bones, and enough space to feel like home. Best part? I could buy it outright, no mortgage needed. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to my footsteps echo off the hardwood floors. This was mine, all mine. No loans, no debt, no strings attached. I'd done this myself, without anyone's help or approval. When Mom called to check in, meaning, talk about Sarah, I mentioned I was moving. "Did you find a cheaper rental?" she asked, distracted. I could hear her shuffling papers on the other end. Just a different place, I said vaguely. Better location. Well, don't spend too much on rent, honey. You know how unstable the job market is for people in your position. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. If she only knew that my position involved managing millions in investments, not pushing papers at Thompson's. At the next family gathering, Aunt Jessica asked about my new place. Ruby's renting a new apartment, Mom jumped in before I could answer. But wait till you hear about Sarah's latest accomplishments. She's about to graduate from Carleton University. Top of her class. I watched the familiar scene unfold, relatives cooing over Sarah's prospects while shooting me pitying glances. Sarah's going places, Dad announced proudly. Not that we're surprised. She's always been our achiever. Already has companies fighting over her. Unlike some people who settle for mediocrity, my cousin whispered to his wife, not quite quietly enough. I sipped my wine and thought about the stock trade I'd made that morning that had earned more than his annual salary. But I stayed quiet. Let them think what they wanted. Then came Sarah's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out, catered food, expensive decorations, the works. I noticed they used the money I sent them to help pay for it, but whatever. I was used to it by now. Sarah pranced around in her cap and gown like she'd just won the Nobel Prize. She spotted me by the punch bowl and made a beeline over, clutching her diploma like a weapon. Look at this, Ruby, she thrust the diploma in my face. Carleton University. Not some state school like you went to. And I already have interviews lined up with top companies. I'm not going to end up pushing papers like you. I took another sip of punch. Congratulations, Sarah. That's all you have to say? Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, well, you. She stood there, practically vibrating with the need for me to acknowledge her superiority. I could have told her about my portfolio. About my fully paid apartment. About how I made more money before my morning coffee than she'd make in her first year of work. But what would be the point? Instead, I just shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing there with her diploma held high like a shield against her own insecurities. 3 months after graduation, Sarah was still unemployed. Those companies that were supposedly fighting over her? Turns out they weren't so impressed with her expensive degree after all. Meanwhile, the loan payments started rolling in. Ruby, Mom called one evening. Do you have a minute to talk? The loan payments for Sarah's education. Mom paused, probably for dramatic effect. They're really crushing us, honey. And with all our other bills. I hate to ask, but could you possibly? How much do you need? I asked, already knowing I'd regret this. Well, if you could increase your monthly help to $2,000, that would be such a blessing. I thought about all the times they dismissed my achievements, all the times Sarah had mocked my career. But I also thought about my bank account, with its comfortable 7 figures that my family knew nothing about. Okay, I said finally. I'll set up the new amount starting next month. Mom's thank you was barely out before she started planning how to spend it. This will help so much with Sarah's loan payments, and maybe we can help her buy some proper interview clothes. A few weeks later, Sarah finally landed a job at the same company where Dad had gone to college with the HR director. The irony wasn't lost on me when she ended up with the title of manager. I stopped by their house one weekend and found Sarah sprawled on the couch, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. God, everything's so expensive, she whined. I can't believe I have to live here with Mom and Dad. This is so embarrassing. You could look at some smaller apartments, I suggested. Or maybe outside the city center? She looked at me like I'd suggested she live in a dumpster. I need to be in the right neighborhood, Ruby. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have standards. I glanced around at our parents' modest living room, where she was currently living rent-free, but kept my mouth shut. Anyway, she continued, tossing her phone aside, this is just temporary. Unlike you, I'm not going to be stuck as a manager forever. I have actual potential. As Thanksgiving approached, Mom went into her usual hosting frenzy. Every year, she insisted on doing everything herself, turning the kitchen into her personal stress domain. But this year was different. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she moaned over the phone a week before the holiday. "I sprained my back getting Sarah's laundry out of the dryer, and I can barely stand up straight. How am I supposed to cook for 20 people? Why don't you let me handle it?" I offered. "I can have everything catered from that new restaurant downtown." "You're such a good daughter," Mom gushed. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I caught sight of Sarah in the background of our video call, rolling her eyes dramatically. Mom's praise of me, however slight, was clearly ruining her day. Thanksgiving Day started like any other family gathering. The catered food arrived perfectly on time, and I helped Mom arrange everything while trying to ignore Sarah's running commentary about how store-bought stuffing could never compare to homemade. I'd brought my laptop along because the markets in Asia would be opening during dinner, and I had a few positions I needed to monitor. I set it up in my old room and left it running while I joined the family. The food was excellent, definitely better than Mom's usual dried-out turkey. As everyone settled in with their plates, Mom couldn't help but mention her back again. "I was so worried about how I'd manage the cooking," she said, addressing the whole table of aunts, uncles, and cousins. But Ruby stepped in and arranged for all this lovely catered food. "Wasn't that thoughtful?" "That's really nice of you, Ruby," Aunt Jessica smiled at me. "It must have been expensive." "Oh, it's nothing," I said, trying to deflect the attention. "I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it." "She's doing well enough at that management job to help us out quite a bit," Mom added proudly, probably the first time she'd bragged about me in years. I noticed Sarah's face darken. She pushed her chair back abruptly and left the room. I thought she was just having one of her usual tantrums, but something felt different this time. She returned moments later, clutching my laptop with a triumphant smirk that made my blood run cold. "Let's see just how well Ruby's really doing," she announced to the whole table. "Since she's so generous, I bet she won't mind if I show everyone her bank account. Time to prove what a loser she really is." I jumped up from my chair. "Sarah, don't." But it was too late. She had already turned the laptop around, my banking app still open from my earlier check. The room went dead silent. Sarah's face drained of color. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her hand started shaking so badly, I thought she might drop my laptop. "Sarah?" Mom asked, concerned. "What's wrong? What does it say?" Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. $4 million. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the tick of Mom's ancient kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my cousin's fork clattering onto his plate. "There must be some mistake," Aunt Jessica said, peering at the screen. "Ruby's a manager at Thompson's." "I haven't worked at Thompson's for years," I said quietly, finally letting the truth out. "I quit to focus on investing full-time. I studied the markets, took courses, learned everything I could. And I got good at it, really good." "You mean you're rich?" Sarah's voice cracked on the last word. I took a deep breath and looked around the table at my family's shocked faces. "I've been investing for years now. Started small, learned as I went. Yes, I have $4 million in that account. And no, I wasn't hiding it, you all just never asked." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Mom's scream shattered it like glass. $4 million? She shot up from her chair, her face turning an alarming shade of red. "You have $4 million and you've been letting us struggle all this time?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Struggle? I send you $2,000 every month. You're a millionaire." She was practically hysterical now, her voice reaching pitches I didn't know were possible. "Your sister has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish, so greedy?" Dad joined in, his face twisted with anger. "We raised you better than this, Ruby. To think you've been hoarding money while your own family suffers." I felt something snap inside me. Years of being the second choice, the afterthought, the reliable but unimportant daughter, it all came rushing out. Hoarding money? Are you serious? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Where were Mom and Dad's savings for your college, Sarah? Oh wait, they didn't save anything, because they spent it all on your endless demands. But funny thing, they didn't pay for my college either. Remember that? I got a full scholarship while you went to your fancy private university on loans. That's different, Mom snapped. Sarah needed. Sarah wanted, Sarah. I was standing now too. It's always been about Sarah. Well, guess what? My money is mine. I earned it. Every penny. $2,000 is nothing to you, Mom shouted back. You should be sending us at least $10,000 a month. We're your parents. The laugh that burst out of me was almost manic. 10,000? You want $10,000 a month? For what? So you can keep spoiling your precious Sarah? I turned to my sister, who was shrinking back now. You wanted to prove I was a loser? Surprise! The sister you've looked down on for years, the one you mocked for being just a manager, turns out she's the successful one. How does it feel? The relatives sat frozen around the table, forks suspended midway to their mouths, watching the scene unfold like a tennis match from hell. Well, if you're so successful, Mom spat, you can certainly afford to help your family more. It's your duty. My duty? I walked over to Sarah and snatched my laptop from her hands. My duty ended the day you decided Sarah was the only daughter worth caring about. She's the promising one, remember? The one with potential? Well, let her fulfill that potential and help you pay the bills. Aunt Jessica tried to intervene. Maybe we should all just calm down. But there was no calming this storm. Mom and Dad were both shouting now, their words overlapping into a hurricane of accusations and demands. Sarah had started crying, her go-to move when things didn't go her way. Without another word, I walked out of my childhood home, the sound of my mother's continued screaming following me all the way to my car. The messages started before I even got home that night. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from Mom, Dad, and Sarah. At first, they were angry demands, then came the guilt trips. I tried responding at first, hoping maybe they'd somehow understand, but it was like talking to a wall. They didn't want to understand, they just wanted access to my bank account. Then Mom took it to social media. Her post was a masterpiece of maternal martyrdom. Heartbroken to discover my eldest daughter has become a millionaire while watching her family struggle. She refuses to help her sister with college loans or support her aging parents. Money truly changes people. Please pray for Ruby to remember her family values. The comments poured in. Family friends I hadn't seen in years suddenly had strong opinions about my character. How could she be so heartless? I always knew there was something off about that one. What kind of person abandons their family like this? Mom liked every single comment, adding little crying emojis and "thank you for understanding" responses. My relatives, who had witnessed the Thanksgiving meltdown firsthand, notably stayed quiet. But their silence didn't help much against the mob of family friends, calling me everything from ungrateful to evil. That was the last straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the recurring transfer to my parents, $2,000 monthly, which they dismissed as pocket change. With one click, I canceled it. I sent Mom one final message. I've canceled the monthly transfers. I'm done being your ATM, don't contact me again. They didn't take the hint. The calls increased, now coming at all hours. Sarah tried using different numbers when I blocked hers. Dad left long, rambling voicemails about family duty. Mom's social media campaign kicked into high gear. I blocked them all, phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. James, I called down to my building's concierge. I need to add some names to the do not admit list. I gave him their names and descriptions, even showed him pictures. He nodded understanding, making careful notes. Sure enough, the very next day, James called up to let me know my parents and Sarah had tried to force their way in. They'd caused quite a scene in the lobby, threatening to call the police. That night, I opened my laptop and started researching real estate in other states. Maybe it was time for a fresh start somewhere new. Somewhere they couldn't find me. Some might call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had their chance, years of chances, actually. They chose to ignore my achievements, belittle my success, and favor Sarah at every turn. Now that they've shown exactly how they view me, I feel no obligation to maintain the relationship. And as I research homes in distant cities, I feel nothing but relief. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. Even, especially, from family.